Today's video I'm going to show you how to make this asphalt material in Blender. So let's just get started. First, delete the default cube and add in a icosphere. Set the icosphere subdivisions to something like 4 or 5, just so it's nice and smooth, and then right click to shade smooth. Open up the shader editor, add in a new material called this asphalt. Make this a little bit bigger, go into rendered mode, make sure you are on cycles. And to get some basic lighting in our scene, you can click this drop down here and then disable scene world. This will just take a default HDRI and you can change them here. The default one is fine though. Alright, in this principal PSTF, I want to add in a Voronoi texture. And if you preview this, the color, we want to use this for like the little parts of the rock that's in there. And we want to use this for our bump. So first put it through a color ramp to make it a grayscale value. And we can also change some parameters here, but for now the default should be fine. Then I want to add in a bump map, place the color into the height and then the normal into the normal. If you preview the material, it will look something like this. We can increase the scale to something like 125 and it will look like this. From a distance this looks just like asphalt already, but we're going to kind of fix this up a little bit and make it even better from close up. So for preview, of course, we can set to a really dark gray and increase the roughness for now. We're going to change that later. But for the bump, I also want to add in some more detail here. So add in a noise texture, give this the same scale, make sure the detail is set to 15, and that should be about it. And now I want to mix this with the color ramp. So hit Ctrl, Shift, and right mouse button on this noise texture, and then drag to the color ramp, which will add in a mix node. Set this to screen, and then change the factor to something like 0.1 I mean. I forgot to set this to smooth F1, and setting the smooth to something like 0.2. Now you will see it clearly. So if we go back to the color, what this does is instead of having it straight like this, you add in some smoothness, which in the grayscale allows the normal to kind of get a gradient from bottom to the top, and that's what we're mixing with the noise texture. So now from a distance it looks a lot better, and that's about it for the bump. The only thing we need to fix now are the color and the roughness. So for the roughness, what I want to do is make the parts at the top more rough than the parts in the valleys, so in the bottom parts, and basically do some ambient occlusion with that. And the idea is that everything that drives across it will wear down the asphalt and make it more rough. So what we can do is add in an ambient occlusion node and place the normal into the normal here. And if we now preview this, you will see some ambient occlusion appear. We can add in a color ramp to intensify this. So more blacks and more white. So for us, we want more roughness at the top parts and less roughness at the bottom parts. So this should be good. Something like this. Make sure to not set this at black, something gray. So that's the difference. And then we can put that into the roughness and see what that looks like. So that's a little bit shiny. So let's add an math node after this. Set this to multiply, and then we can multiply this value and play with the roughness. And what I want to do is make it so if this multiply is set to 1, it should be pretty rough. And if it's set to 0, it should be really shiny. So I'm going to play with this color ramp a little bit more. Alright, so something like this. So now we can change this value for the roughness, and we'll use that later in the node graph. And then for the color, I want to add in a mixed color node. I want to set this to a black value, and then this color here to something gray, and this will be the color of our asphalt. And then I just want to use this noise texture as the factor for it to mix. So we have some noise in the color as well. This just adds a tiny bit of realism to our shader. Alright, and that is pretty much it for the asphalt shader. We can just select everything, hit Ctrl G to make this a group. If we tab back, you will see this node group here. We can name this asphalt as well, and click this shield icon to make sure it doesn't get deleted if no objects are using it. And now we can plug in our scale to the output and all the things we want to change from this view here. So just do that real quick. And once you're all done, it should look something like this. And if we tab back, you have your asphalt material here. And this is great. All right, so that's for the asphalt. Now I want to add in some stripes to this. So I'm going to do that in a different node group because I might want to change this. So I'm going to do this in a different node group because I want to layer this on top. Disconnect this shader for a moment. And we're going to be working with an entirely new shader. So add in a texture coordinate node. Get the generated coordinate and then a separate XYZ. And then we want to look for the gradient that goes from the left to the right. For me, that's the x-axis, but it might be the y or the z. Z could work as well, but I want to display it vertically like this. So I'm going to use the x. And then I want to add in a math node, set this to less than. And now we're going to control our stripes. So I want the first stripe to appear from point 1. So let's just set this at greater than. So we get some more white to work with. Then just duplicate that node, set this to less than, use the same value, and then set the threshold to something like 0.2. This is how thick your stripe will be, so 0.15, I think that works better. And then add in a new math node and just multiply these two, and that should look like this. I want to add in a value node as well, so we can control the place this is going to be at. And we also need a different math node to add in the thickness. So for us, that should be 0.05. And now if we change this, we can change the location of our stripe. So I wanted it at 0.1, and that should be good. Now for the right part, we are going to be using the same values. So I'm also going to add in a value node for this value, just so we can reuse it. All right, so for the stripe on the right, we're just going to basically reuse these nodes, so duplicate them. And reusing these values. So just connect the x generated coordinates there and there. And then for the threshold, we can use the value and then add in a math node. Set this to subtract. I place it in the bottom value and subtract it from 1. And if we place this in a threshold, this should line up with the right part. Make sure this is these are flipped, so this should be less than now and this should be greater than. And then we just need to connect up the values. So this should use the same value as here, and this should be subtract. And now you have your right stripe. So just cleaning this up a little bit so it's easier for you to see. Also connect this value here. All right, so over on the top stripe here, we have the value for the threshold. So this is where the stripe will be. And then the value for the thickness. And on the bottom one, we have the same thing. So this will change where it is, and this will change the thickness. And now we can actually just add these two together. So add it in on our math node. A lot of math going on in this video. And if we add these two together, make sure we clamp them. We can change the position and the thickness. And what we can do now is use this as a mask. So hit Ctrl G, set this as the output, call this output, and then just change the values from the socket here. Call this position, call this thickness. All right, we can tab back, call this stripe mask. Make sure to hit the shield icon. And now we can just use two asphalt materials and mix them two together. So mix the shaders, preview this, change the color of this one to yellow, and then put in the factor here. And change these shaders around, of course, happens every time. And now we have our stripes. We can add in another asphalt material, mix this together again, and use a different stripe mask in order to create the inner lines if you want them. And maybe they should be a little bit less thick. And then you can just change the colors here. Maybe they should be blue or something. I have no idea. Do whatever you want. But yeah, this is how you make the asphalt material. So if you learned something, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.